Hello, and welcome to Cosmological Arguments. I'm your host, John Bannan. What's the science underlying the cosmological arguments for the existence of God? Now, the cosmological arguments for the existence of God are the atheist's worst nightmare. And the reason for this is that they can't get out of these arguments, and they are supported both by circumstantial evidence as well as science. CA stand for cosmological arguments. Now, the cosmological arguments use circumstantial evidence based on the observed behavior of the universe and the cosmos to infer, through logic and reasoning, the existence of God. Now, the circumstantial evidence they rely on are referred to in each of the arguments. But for example, they would be such things as that the universe is made of parts, which is obvious. For example, atoms. But it's plainly obvious to anybody that the universe is completely made of parts. That is, smaller things that join together to make bigger things. That principle is true, and it surrounds us. It's undeniable. Other circumstantial evidence includes our observation of the flow of time. We all experience the flow of time. Um, we also experience the flow of causation, cause and effect. We all understand that there's such a thing as cause and effect, or potentiality and actualization in our lives. We see it. We see things change, and we see things change into other things. We see that things cause other things through change to become real. This is all circumstantial evidence pointing to the existence of God. We observe order in our environment. We observe patterns to things and how patterns are based on prior patterns. And there's a logical change in those patterns and order. Uh, we we observe that things are contingent on other things, that things are caused by other things, that those things wouldn't exist unless something else caused it to exist. Therefore, the thing's very existence is contingent on this prior thing. Uh, we we observe that we have brains and we can understand reality. That uh, the universe is intelligible. It's a rational, reasonable place that follows rules. Um, we also observe that things appear to be uh, graded in terms of their being, in terms of minimal and maximal beings. Something can be cold or warm or hot, or the hottest thing or the coldest thing. Um, and we also observe a design in nature. We know that things are designed. Um, the human body, DNA, is a designed thing. Now, evolution designed it. I'm not a creationist in the sense that I think God had a direct hand in the um, design of human DNA. But because God creates the laws of physics and the universe, God is ultimately the cause of evolution and the design of the human body. But we can see that there is design in nature, especially in living things. So these are all items of circumstantial evidence that we can see with our own eyes and observe in reality through our daily lives that are indisputable. And this circumstantial evidence is the basis of the cosmological arguments for the existence of God. However, there's also science that supports the cosmological arguments. So I want to give you a few of those scientific items that are of importance in terms of proving that the cosmological arguments are true and that God does in fact exist. Now, while the cosmological arguments do not rely on the scientific principles to prove the existence of God, they're very helpful when arguing with atheists or non believers or agnostics about the existence of God. They also indicate that God is a real metaphysical being. So, of the scientific principles that help a theist prove the existence of God, the most important by far is the Big Bang. Now, the Big Bang is a short name for the Big Bang cosmology. It's the current understanding of the origin of our universe. And basically, what it says is at the beginning of time, there was an expanding singularity, and it expanded during the inflationary epoch. And then later there was this hot a Big Bang where matter was formed. And eventually the universe over 13.8 billion years has expanded and cooled to the state at which it is in now. Now, this Big Bang cosmology is very, very important because it proves one very important point, and that is that the universe had a beginning. And because the universe had a beginning, then one can say something must have started it. What started the Big Bang? Time had a beginning. All physical reality had a beginning point. This first appearance of the expanding singularity. So where'd that come from? How did it appear? And the answer is God made it appear because there's nothing else that you can point to scientifically that could explain the appearance of the expanding singularity. The singularity itself is a mathematical construct of an infinitely dense point of matter and energy. But no one believes that that was actually the case. So instead, you're talking about something that's slightly less than infinitely dense. And that's why I call it the expanding singularity. But at some point, this thing had to appear from non existence. So God created it ex nihilo, out of non existence itself. Not made of something, not out of nothing, not made out of something, not something that has pre-existing energy or matter, but the appearance of something out of nowhere. And the Big Bang is critical proof that God exists. It's the theist's number one scientific proof that God is real. A simple question you ask yourself is, well, why do you need a Big Bang? Why couldn't you have an infinite, eternal, steady state universe instead? A place that has always existed, is infinitely large, has big bangs in it all the time, and creates new universes and galaxies, and things just recycle endlessly, eternally. Well, that's not the case. There is no scientific evidence of anything, any physical reality that pre-exists the Big Bang. It all begins with the expanding singularity. So there isn't this infinite, eternal, steady state universe. And you got to ask yourself, well, why not? Why do you need this Big Bang? And the reason is because you need a creator. You need something to set the initial order of creation, and that's God. That means you need an uncaused creator that is not made of physical reality to make this singularity appear and expand. Why do you need a bang? You wouldn't, but there it is. So that's the best proof, scientific proof, that God must be real. Okay, a second scientific principle that's very important is the principle of conservation of energy and mass. This is a law of physics, and what it says is you can't create or destroy energy or mass. You can only convert it, turn it into something else, but you can't create it or destroy it. Now, there's one exception to this, and that is the Big Bang itself. The laws of physics, including the law of the principle of conservation of energy and mass, breaks down at the Big Bang singularity, which means the laws of physics, the known laws of physics no longer apply at the creation of the expanding singularity. So science basically doesn't know why the expanded singularity appeared. We know why. It was because God made it appear. But science has no way to test for God, so God is never a hypothesis in science. So after the Big Bang, our laws of physics that we know came into being. And one of those laws is the principle of conservation of energy and mass. So after the Big Bang, which is the creation of energy and mass, after that, you can no longer create or destroy energy or mass. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because it tells you something about our position in the universe. And that is that we are in a dark, closed room with no windows. You cannot get out of the universe. There's no way to escape the universe, to leave the universe in order to study what caused the Big Bang, or what caused the universe to exist. And the reason is that in order to leave the universe, your scientific instruments would have to disappear from the universe and go outside the universe, if there is even an outside to the universe. So it would have to disappear from physical reality. But it can't do that because of the principle of conservation of energy and mass. The energy and mass contained in the scientific instruments would disappear from the universe. It would be a destruction of energy and mass, a net loss to the universe, and that would be a violation of physics. So that can't happen. So you can't leave the universe. Science cannot leave the universe to collect data on its cause. That's important because that tells you there's a limit to science. And because science is limited and can't collect data to prove a proof of the reason why the universe exists, your only choice is to use logic and reasoning and circumstantial evidence, such as the cosmological arguments, to figure out why physical reality exists. And those arguments say it's because of a God who exists. Likewise, um, the Big Bang occurred, but the Big Bang was also the beginning of time itself. So, because time began with the Big Bang, there's no way for science to go backward in time to see uh, what existed, if anything, in terms of physical reality prior to the beginning of time. So, there's no way for science to go before the Big Bang and see what caused it to occur. So that's another reason why science cannot address the ultimate question of what caused physical reality and the universe to exist. Science is limited, and these two principles, these 2 points of science, prove that. And you'll get a lot of atheists and agnostics who want to throw science at you as this is proof God doesn't exist. Well, that's just flat out wrong. Science can't address the question of the ultimate cause of physical reality or the universe. It can't. It's impossible. Um, so you just tell them that, look, sorry, science is limited. Can't tell us anything about this. Can't prove it. Can't collect data on it. Your only choice is metaphysics or philosophy. And here's the cosmological arguments that prove the existence of God. All right. A third point of science, which is really good for the cosmological arguments, is the nature of the photon. The photon is a particle of light. Anyone who has a flashlight, turns it on, and light comes out of it, knows what a photon is. It's light. Light is a massless particle. And under the theory of relativity, according to Einstein, the photon does not experience time. It is a timeless reality. Now, that may seem bizarre, but it's also true. The photon does not experience time. It's called a null geodesic in relativity terms. A photon can be in your frame of reference in terms of relativity, so you can see it pass. You can see it go through your time. But it itself doesn't have a time. It doesn't experience anything. That's very, very strange, but also true. Ask any astrophysicist about whether the photon experiences time or not, and they'll tell you it does not. And not only that, there's been recent developments with photon colliders at the Large Hadron Collider, which has shown that you can actually smash two photons into each other, and the result will be two particles with mass. And what's so interesting about this is what you're dealing with is two photons, both of which don't experience time, having an interaction and causing the existence of particles with time. So what you have is you have a timeless entity causing something to exist that has mass and experiences time. So it's essentially cause and effect, but without time. Now that's bizarre, and you would think impossible, but yet the photon pulls this trick off. And by analogy, you can, if somebody wonders, well, how could a timeless God who doesn't experience time create something, physical reality? I would point to the photon and say, well, there you go. There's an example of something that does not experience time and yet can cause something that does experience time to exist. And the photon itself clearly is a real thing. It's a reality, and it doesn't experience time. So time itself is not absolutely necessary in order for, at least in terms of the photon or any other massless particle, to exist. That's news to probably a lot of atheists you might be arguing with. All right, another scientific truth is that time travel is impossible. Everybody's seen sci-fi movies that involve time travel, and a lot of people assume time travel is possible and that someday we'll be able to do that into the future, and that's all false. Time travel is definitely not possible. It has never been scientifically proven to be real, and it's rife with paradoxes. The problem is if you could go back in time and, let's say, kill your parents before you were conceived, then you're looking over your parents' dead bodies, but you still exist. You've destroyed your causal history, and yet you still exist. So where did you come from? And the answer is you came from nothing, nowhere. You don't have a causal history. So you would be an example of something from nothing, which is an impossibility. You can't get something from nothing. That's the old Latin phrase, ex nihilo nihil fit. So it's an impossibility. The paradox proves time travel is impossible. Not only that, there has been no scientific proof that time travel is real. So all those people who want to claim that reality was somehow a result of retrocausality from the future affecting the past, and the past affecting the future, and essentially the universe is self-created, are full of nonsense. Because in order for that to be real, time travel would have to be real, and time travel is not real. It is paradoxical. It is pure science fiction, and that's all it will ever be. Another scientific truth, scientific principle, is the Planck unit. Uh, there are these units, length, weight, some others that they're called Planck units, and it's basically the smallest limit on this particular measurement that is possible, that is measurable or even has meaning for our laws of physics. So once you reach, for instance, the Planck length, which is the smallest thing there could possibly be and yet still be meaningful, you can't say anything in terms of our laws of physics about what lies at smaller levels than that. You can't even say there are smaller levels than that. It's a limit to science, to our theories of physics. And why this is important is because it shows that physical reality has never been proven by science to be infinitely divisible or continuous. That is, you can't get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller the more you cut it up to for infinity. That would be a continuous thing, like a number line from like 0 to 1. There would be an infinite number of points in between 0 and 1. Well, physical reality has never been proven to be like that. In fact, it's been shown there's a Planck unit, Planck length, and anything smaller than the Planck length is unmeasurable, unknowable, meaningless to physics. So this whole idea of infinities, actual infinities in physical reality, are often brought up by atheists. And you can use the Planck length to shoot that down in terms of things getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So any physics theory is subject to the Planck length, including general relativity. So even though general relativity, the mathematics of general relativity, is based on calculus, therefore, because it's mathematics, it has a base of infinities. The truth is, in physical reality, um, that mathematical model does not prove that physical reality follows suit. Physical reality has a Planck length, a Planck unit, and you can't get any smaller than that. So while the mathematics of general relativity suggests that physical reality is continuous and it's infinitely divisible, that's just a mathematical model. That's not been physically proven to be true. And because there's a Planck length, there's no way it could ever be proven to be true. Atheists love to bring up infinities, and this is another important scientific point. Science has never proven that an actual infinite exists in physical reality anywhere. So any atheist who says, well, the universe is infinite, or you can keep dividing forever, or time just is infinite and has never had a beginning, any of those sort of infinite claims in physical reality, none of them have been scientifically proven. That's just pure speculation. The atheists may make it seem like this is a proven scientific fact, but I'm telling you, it's not. There's no scientific proof of any actual infinite in physical reality. So the smaller you go, at some point you get to the Planck length, and you got to stop. Our instruments can't possibly delve any deeper into any smaller area of space time, if there even is something like that, if it even goes smaller. And the other problem with infinities, just from a purely philosophical point of view, is that there's no way to prove an actual infinity in physical reality anyway. And the problem is because if you attempt to prove that something in physical reality is infinite in scope, you're going to have to, I mean, how are you going to do it? You're going to have to prove that it keeps going and going and going and going and going, or getting smaller and smaller and smaller, or further and further and further away. But you're going to have to stop at some point. And then I'm going to say, well, you didn't go far enough. You got to keep going, and then you'll find the end. Who's to say I'm wrong? So they keep going and going and going, and then eventually they get tired and they stop again. And they're like, "Isn't this enough?" And then I say, "No, it's not. You've got to keep going and going and going forever in order to prove an infinite, which of course is impossible. You can't continue something forever. That's physically impossible. So it is physically, philosophically impossible to prove an actual infinite in physical reality anyway. Can't be done." But, of the science we know of and the data we've collected, nothing. We've seen nothing that appears to be an actual infinite in physical reality. Now, the Planck length is also important for another reason, and that is it demonstrates the need for occasionalism. I've done a whole video on occasionalism you can look at, but essentially what it means is that because slices of physical reality get smaller and smaller and smaller, but at some point it has to stop. There has to be a smallest slice of physical reality. That means that there has to be a God in order to create that slice, destroy it, and then create the next slice. This is a timeless act, but nevertheless, you need that God to remember what the first slice was, destroy it, and then create the next slice, which is just slightly different, in order to get that continuity that's required for physical reality and for motion and change to occur. And because physical reality isn't continuous, it's not infinite, like between 0 and 1, it's discrete. And because it's discrete, there's nothing in between these two slices. So you need a God in order to create and destroy one and then create the next one. So the Planck length essentially shows that the universe is not continuous. It's not infinitely divisible, and that really opens the door up to the need for occasionalism. And you need a God, a creator God, in order for occasionalism to work. Another scientific truth is the quantum mechanical level is always oscillating and vibrating. It's always moving. It's in a constant state of change. So, at the very smallest levels of physical reality, you will find that physical reality is always moving around. It's vibrating, oscillating, changing. And what this means is all physical reality is in a constant state of change or vibration at the lowest level, because the larger things are obviously made of the smallest things. And if the smallest things are always vibrating or changing, then the largest things are doing the same. It's just not readily observable as it would be in the smallest scale of things. But everything is changing. Change is a necessary state of physical reality for things to exist. And because things change, then they must be caused by the change. Without the change, they don't exist. So things that change are caused. These have to be caused things. They're caused by the change. And that means the whole universe, because it's all in a state of constant change, must all be caused. There's nothing in the universe is uncaused. So again, that's why you need a God. You need an uncaused God, the first cause, to create the universe, which needs that cause, because the universe itself is caused. All of it is caused, even to the smallest level. It's all in a state of change, which implies it's all caused. And lastly, one scientific point I want to make is about occasionalism and the block universe. Einstein's general relativity posits the existence of the block universe. And the block universe essentially is a static reality made of the past, the present, and the future. You can't experience the past or the future, but they're considered just as real as the present moment. And essentially, it's a giant block of three dimensions of space and one dimension of time. Now, I've done a video on occasionalism in the block universe. You can look at that. But the idea of the block universe can be very atheistic. And the problem with the block universe is, in terms of science, its existence has never been proven to be true. The reason is because you're stuck in the present moment. In order to prove that the past or the future is just as real as the present moment, you would have to leave the present moment in order to do that. That means time travel. You would have to time travel. But we know time travel is impossible. So there is no way to definitively prove the existence of the block universe. The block universe is the mathematical model underlying general relativity. But that mathematical model has never been proven to be the actual truth in physical reality. And it doesn't need to be proven to be the physical truth for for relativity to work. But understand, the block universe is a mathematical model that has never been proven to be true. That's scientifically true. And you can't prove it's true because you'd have to time travel. You'd have to go to the future, grab the winning Powerball lottery numbers, for today, bring them back here, let me play them, and I'll become a millionaire, and then I'll believe you time traveled and that the block universe is real. But unless you can time travel and prove that the future really is there, or the past really is there, like going in the past and shooting your parents, and then you wouldn't exist, uh, which of course is a paradox. But unless you can do that, which you cannot prove scientifically that the block universe is real. The block universe is only a mathematical model underlying Einstein's relativity. So don't make the wrong assumption that it is scientifically proven as true in terms of physical reality. That's a big mistake. Uh, the philosophical concept of occasionalism can explain all quantum effects, whether it's time dilation, um, or any of sort of relativistic effects that might arise from the block universe, even quantum entanglement effects. It can explain all of those things without the necessity of a block universe, because God is creating each present moment, and he can create it any way he wants, to appear any way he wants. So he can certainly make it appear as if a block universe is a real thing, even though the block universe isn't a real thing. So, and not only that, occasionalism explains why the present moment is special and why you can't leave the present moment, because the present moment is the current creation of reality under occasionalism. So occasionalism has a lot more going for it than the block universe. Well, occasionalism can't be proven as true either. It's just that it makes a heck of a lot more sense than the block universe does. And occasionalism requires a God. Now, the block universe itself, the biggest problem with it is, well, the block universe would include anything that could happen in the past or in the future or in the present. It would just be one giant block of space and time, where the present moment is just an illusion. Now, there's problems with this idea of the block universe, which is, what do you mean the present moment is an illusion? It doesn't seem like an illusion to me. And they have no explanation for that. They just sort of ignore that issue and say, well, it's an illusion, whatever that means. They have no explanation for why the present moment would be would feel like an illusion. That's just passing the buck on a problem with the block universe. And the other thing with the block universe is, we know there was a Big Bang. So you know that even the block universe had a beginning point. So, it began. Why did it begin? Who caused it to begin? God. So, only an infinite block universe, that is an infinite block reality of every possibility for physical reality. An infinite multiverse could cause a problem for God, because if you take away anything God could possibly do in terms of physical reality, then you could ask yourself, well, what do you need a God for? So if you have an infinite multiverse that covers every possibility for physical reality, every logical possibility for physical reality, so everything that God could possibly do is done somewhere in this giant block infinite multiverse, then you'd ask the question, well, what do you need God for? You could still make an argument that God is a necessary being for these contingencies. So the necessary beings argument still works. But the fact of the matter is, the block universe is a mathematical model. There's still a Big Bang and a beginning to the block universe. And this idea of an infinite multiverse block universe is totally unprovable and is science fiction. So don't believe in the multiverse or an infinite multiverse block universe. There's no way to prove it. You can't leave the universe to prove the existence of a multiverse, let alone an infinite multiverse. And you can't even prove the existence of the reality of the past or future in our own block universe. So you can't even prove it's real. So this is all highly speculative science fiction that you will get from atheists who will act as if, oh, this is proven scientific fact because that's what Einstein said. Well, it's not scientific proven fact. It's a mathematical model. It's a theory, and it has big issues. And I let you know what they are. Okay, so there's some science that points to a God and helps prove that the cosmological arguments are correct and that science is limited, and you need to read the cosmological arguments and use metaphysics or philosophy in order to address the question of the cause of physical reality, which results in the need for a God, and that's true. Science is the gold standard for truth finding, that's true, but science is limited and it can't answer the ultimate question of why physical reality exists. Can't even answer the question of why the universe exists. So you have no choice but to go to the silver standard, which is philosophy, which is circumstantial evidence based on logic and reasoning that you can infer that God is more likely than not the cause of the universe and physical reality. And that's good enough reason to believe God exists. So I hope you learned something. And believe me, science does back up the cosmological arguments. And the cosmological arguments really are the atheist's worst nightmare. All right, take care.